Alright guys, what's up, Tomboy Official? I hit record and didn't really notice that I was hitting record. I've got 13% or an hour, 44 minutes of my battery left, so I'm going to try to do this quickly because 44 minutes might actually be less than 44 minutes. I was wanting to talk about something along the lines of dating friendships. Not dating friendships, but like dating and or friendships. I recently recorded an episode about kind of early gay memories about my childhood. I don't know if I posted that or not, or if I'm gonna post it. I was gonna try to take things kind of from that young point in life to kind of like talking about other things, but I kind of wanted to talk more about what I said I was going to talk about last time, which was this as it pertains to dating, this law of attraction. I think I talked about it last time, but that kind of push and pull with people. Kind of how you like if you let things, not as a game, but if you let things, sometimes, not always, but sometimes if you just kind of back off a little bit, people don't feel like you're kind of coming on too strong, and they'll eventually reach you. Now, there are theories about why people come on too strong, with like attachment theory. I think I've talked about it on here before, but I'm so rusty in psychology right now, which is pretty bad because I am working not so much with a lot of psychological theories, though. More with like, learning some of the behavioral health programs around and services and things. I've been talking, just talking to friends, doing good on that level, but when it comes to this topic of I don't know if I really want to talk fully about that again because I kind of talked about it already, but I guess a better topic is discussing like different levels of comfort with someone and the ability to be authentic or vulnerable or both together. Now, it doesn't have to be like every moment of the day is like some vulnerable, conversation with a whole lot of depth and like talking about all your past traumas like every second of every day. Like sometimes things are going to be surface level, sometimes they'll be jokey, sometimes people are going to be in a bad mood. There's going to be a lot more variety than just those types of conversations, but when they come up, they need to be something that when they come up, they need to be something that's, it helps if it's comfortable. I guess I'll put it that way. I think for what I've seen, I'm not saying relationships can't work, but they might not be as fulfilling for people if they aren't able to kind of have a level of authenticity. Now, I have an example of that, but it's not. It's not about anyone in particular. I was having a conversation with someone, a friend of mine, this week, and we weren't like talking crap about people. We were talking about ourselves. Like we were um, asking and answering kind of questions about ourselves, like on a certain level, kind of about like dating and stuff like that. Um, and we got into this topic of um, who we both know, who me and this other person both know, that hypothetically um, um, I don't know how to word this, that hypothetically I might be surprised if I learned about some certain thing about someone. And I basically, I mean, they weren't like about to like reveal something about someone we knew. They were just asking me hypothetically about the topic we were talking about, me and this friend, about the topic we were talking about surrounding dating. Who would me and who would I be surprised about? Um, so let's say, for example, and this isn't what we were talking about, but wow, 21 minutes. I knew the battery was gonna die a lot faster. Okay, now I gotta find a way to plug this thing in. Let's say we were talking about like polyamory or something. Or, yeah, like polyamory. Not polygamy, polyamory. Like poly relationships and like open relationships. Um, and so I'm kind of making a more hypothetical explanation of this conversation, but it's after midnight. It's actually almost 1 o'clock in the morning. Um, I'm just trying to tire myself out. So basically, let's say we were talking about poly relationships and saying like who of the people that we knew together, that we knew in common, who would I be the most surprised about if they were in a poly relationship? Let's say that's what the conversation was. It wasn't. We were talking about some other thing, but it was still kind of along those lines. And I was basically saying, I don't know, because a lot of the people we know in common are through like a religious background. And because of that, and because of this specific religion, the people we knew in common, most of them weren't very open about their lifestyles or many things about themselves. I'm not saying they were lying about things. I'm just saying they weren't very open. For example, when I was with a lot of these friend groups, we might talk about dating. You know, that might come out. Not dating each other necessarily, but like if someone kind of liked somebody, they might reveal that to one of their closer friends of the group. If there's like a crush going on or something. And this is like a lot. I'm talking about a lot of people. Like it's not just like 5 people. It's like a whole like congregation of people that we knew in common, that we regularly saw and interacted with for years on end. Um, so we did know each other pretty well on a certain level, but there were more taboo things that we never really talked too much about. Like, we didn't really talk too much about sexual topics. Um, I don't know if there were gay people. Oh, there were, but I don't know if if the ones that I knew were the only ones. I don't know if there were others in that congregation. I don't know, because people didn't really talk about it. I didn't talk about it. Like, people didn't talk about it. Um, but the people I knew who were gay in all the other settings that I knew them. You know, they were open to the world. So I'm wondering if there were other LGBT people there. That's one thing that I am wondering. Because I'm pretty sure, just percentage wise, there had to be. Like, because, there were, I don't know how many people were there, but just sheer statistics. There would have very likely been more LGBT people connected with that environment. But that was something that people didn't really say. I don't think they were like not allowed. Like, the people who were LGBT that were out were always accepted there, as far as I understood. I never saw, like, there were people, at least two or more people in the congregation that were on Facebook and openly homophobic, but this wasn't like the pastor or anything like that, and the pastor did call it out. And they weren't just only being homophobic, but they were just being mean in general online. A couple people were having an argument, and so that did get called out once in the middle of a service where they talked about, etiquette, and the people shouldn't really be online doing having those arguments and stuff about how it's wrong. Um, Not to have the disagreements, but just the level that it got to with the name calling and all that. It's like it got to a pretty dramatic level. And so the pastor kind of called that out in public, saying they didn't really want to see a lot of that kind of stuff going on, and I thought that was cool. Because they were being very mean to each other, online, openly, on like a Facebook wall somewhere, or on each other's walls. I don't remember. This is like probably 15 years ago. Like, it was a long time ago. Back when a lot of people were always on Facebook. It was that long ago. So yeah, people didn't really talk about, you know, sexuality much. Um, and people didn't really talk much about, they didn't talk about sexuality. They didn't talk, they were even like not comfortable talking about who they had a crush on. Like, obviously, you don't want everybody to know who you have a crush on, but people weren't even comfortable like talking about crushes. Like, it was just such a secretive environment. Like, you're kind of expected to be a certain way, this certain proper, there's a certain way of being proper that was kind of defined by, um, having a lot of taboo topics and that you just didn't really discuss openly. Now, if it was like in private with like one or two friends, you might be a little more open. And that's a maybe. Because I don't know, I feel like I had a hard time trusting a lot of people because I realized people kind of like gossiped a lot. But there were people at this specific congregation that me and this friend were talking about. There were people that I felt were really trustworthy people. Were they? I don't know. Maybe they weren't, but to me, I felt they were. I had no proof that they weren't in my life, so I kind of trusted them with a lot of stuff. Um, but that was rare. That was rare amongst this type of religion. Um, People didn't really discuss, like, say if people were having sex, that was kind of not a discussion if you weren't married. And even if you were, it was kind of like, I mean, you could probably discuss it a little more if you were married, but you weren't really supposed to. Like, you're not gonna be revealing all that to people, but it was just really closed off. People weren't mean necessarily, but it just, it didn't, it wasn't a fully authentic environment for some things. Like, there was authenticity there, people being able to share things, but certain things, like especially surrounding sexuality related things, they were kind of like less, there was less conversation around that kind of stuff. Um, so being a single person in a group of single people that don't talk about sexuality or dating or crushes or, and just going out as a group and not even really, like, people didn't really flirt. There was no drinking. Like, we'd go out to like the beach or whatever as like a group. Maybe go out to dinner, go out for like coffee shop, tea shops, boba, stuff like that. Just really wholesome, casual stuff. We'd go out, do just go to diners, whatever. Play cards, not gamble for money, but just play with the chips and watch movies. Um, Not really. I think we went to one movie together and that didn't work out very well, but like watching movies, like we would use the projector and like screen it on the wall and stuff and like just stuff like that. Like, it was fun, and a couple people had apartments we kind of could go to on some rare occasions and stuff, and maybe sleep over, maybe do something else there. But yeah, we saw each other a lot, we hung out a lot, there was a sense of community there. But when you're trying to like develop a more personal relationship with someone, it's kind of hard to have a group of people there, like a group of like 10 or so people, and it's hard to kind of get to talk to people alone. It's not impossible to like ask someone out or whatever, but everybody might find out about it, everyone might know. And when everybody knows, it gets to be really awkward. So I don't know what to say. I didn't really know what to tell my friend. I was kind of like, well, I don't really know who I'd be surprised about because people aren't like open enough in this environment. I'd be maybe surprised about anybody because everyone kind of plays the role of being kind of like, you know, they don't really express their sexuality in any way. It's almost, asexual wouldn't be the right word, but they just don't seem to, like, it just culturally wasn't appropriate in that religion to kind of like be expressive about your crushes or like flirt with them or be like kind of like, you know, I mean, you definitely weren't supposed to be like having sex with people unless you were marrying them, and you weren't really supposed to be just like getting divorced and getting married and getting divorced and getting married. So, well, yeah, so you basically weren't. I don't know. It wasn't that people couldn't talk about things. It was just that people were a little shaming too about if you were like expressing any kind of interest in another person. Like I remember specifically there was this person that I was getting along really well with who was quite a bit younger, but an adult. But we were probably like 7 years apart or something. And there was like a pretty big age gap. So I was kind of like not secure about trying to pursue that. Plus, they didn't even live in the same state. And it was like a younger cousin of some kind of friends. We were friendly, but I don't know how close we really were. Um, but they, we got along. They were cool, and I thought this person was cute and fun, and they were artistic and like techie stuff and video games, and would bring their games to church, and then after, we would eat them because it was a late service, and so we would eat dinner after, and then they would kind of like when Sabbath was over, they would bring out these like video games and stuff, and I remember playing Skyrim, and like they had this really cool gaming laptop, and like we were listening to music, and like we like music and art and all kinds of stuff, and so they showed me some pretty cool software and some of their drawings, and I was like really into them, like they're into like anime, and but I knew they were in town like just for the summer, but we did have a lot of times where we hung out at like picnics, and there was this one event where a pastor was getting, I don't know what it's called, like inaugurated, or I don't know what the word is when you become I really don't know what the word is, but it was like a big service where there was like a dinner after to celebrate. But basically, he became ordained. That's the word, ordained. Oh my goodness. So he became ordained. So at his ordination service, at the dinner, well, this had been going on for a while actually, not just at this dinner, but this person, I guess the first time they had this like handheld game. I don't know if it was like a Nintendo Switch. I don't remember because this was so long ago. I don't think it was a Switch. I don't remember. I think it might have been because they had Mario Kart, but I might be mixing it up with some guy who was outside on a patio at Gossip where we were playing his Switch and playing Mario Kart. I don't really know what we were playing. But it's like a handheld game, right? And so you're playing, and this person kind of like, they're like, I was losing, because I wasn't that good, and then they were like, oh, like you're doing it wrong, like, and they kind of like grab my hands while I'm holding, it's like a handheld game, so like, you're holding it with two hands, and they kind of reached like over my hands, and were kind of like staring and like trying to make it so I would win. And I was kind of like trying to like take it away from them, like, nah, I got this, So they were kind of like leaning over me and like trying to like get to the game and stuff, and like we were just kind of playing around. It was nothing serious. But I'm pretty sure people saw that. But we were doing it kind of outside the door of the kitchen of this one like fellowship hall where we used to eat. So that was the only time where I was like, okay, like I'm comfortable with this person and comfortable doing that, but I don't want to be, doing this in front of everybody. But I thought we were kind of like alone enough. Like there were maybe people passing by, walking in and out of that fellowship hall into the parking lot, but we were kind of like, just, I don't think it was like a romantic thing. I think it was more, yeah, I don't really think it was romantic. It was, I don't know. I wouldn't call it romance. Um, we were just playing around, you know. It was fun. We're having fun playing around. Um, there was a little touching, but it was nothing inappropriate. Um, and we were like at church, but we weren't like in a service. It was like night after the service, but we were hanging out with a bunch of church people and pastors around and stuff. But we were just hanging out playing games and like, you know, I didn't mind them being a little handsy. Like they were only being like that with the game. Like they weren't doing it like at any other time. But we were just kind of having like a playful moment, and somebody saw it or something. Like it was kind of obvious. I was like, okay, like this is getting a little playful and like awkward because there were people around. They weren't like standing around watching, but there were people like within like a few feet that could have walked by or could have looked over and seen what we were doing. So I was like, okay, I don't really want that to go on too long, like in this space, because it was already like, first of all, playing video games in the first place was already kind of like almost taboo, even though it wasn't. It wasn't during the service or anything, and it wasn't on Sabbath either. It was after the Sabbath. But we were kind of pushing a little bit of limits there with the video games on the site, and the we weren't keeping our hands to ourselves. But that was like a couple minutes. It wasn't like a whole night of that. It was like, how long does it take to lose a game of Mario Kart? To lose a race? It wasn't longer than one race. It was like however long it took to get through like one race. So at max, that's about how long it was. That we were kind of just like playing around like that. So fast forward to this, what did I call it? The ordination service. The service is over. Again, Sabbath is over now. It's night. You know, we're outside on this outdoor patio. They're serving like I don't know if it was a potluck or a dinner, like a reception or something. I don't know what it was, honestly. But there were tables and there was food. I don't know if there was music. But it was like a casual after church like social gathering that was connected with this ordination service. So it wasn't church anymore, it wasn't Sabbath anymore again. And I don't remember what I did at this point, but I kind of saw this person there, you know. I remember they came outside and kind of came and sat at our table or something. And I don't know if I asked them to sit with us or I don't remember, but I did something where I don't know what was going on. I really don't remember, but it was at least mildly flirty. And one of my strict friends caught on to it and was kind of like, "Hey, like, what are you doing?" kind of thing. Now I didn't do anything wrong, but just the way she was kind of like a little shaming about it. Like I don't think she was teasing. She was trying to like tell me don't do that. You know, don't interact with this person in that way. Just kind of like, hey, like tone it down kind of thing. But I don't remember what we did because it was talking. We were talking, and then I guess the person went away. I don't know if they heard the comment from my friend. They probably did, honestly. And I think that's why that night I may not have talked to that person, not the friend, but I may not have talked to that person that I was kind of like, that I kind of thought was kind of interesting. And like, I wasn't expecting it to go anywhere. I wasn't trying to date them or get with them. I was like, well, they're here for a couple months. I'm going to see them probably almost every weekend, and they're really fun. They were more fun and interesting than anyone I'd met in a long time, and we had a lot in common. So I was cool with that. I was like, I don't really need to, be too like holding back too much. I didn't feel like I needed to be too hesitant to kind of like express a little bit that like, yeah, I think you're fun, I'm having fun with you kind of thing. But we only saw each other at church. We weren't like hanging out. I think we went out one time with our group, and I offered, because I was like, I really want this person to hang out more than just at church. But like, I think the cousins were staying at a hotel locally in like Long Beach or something. We were hanging out in Long Beach with a group, but I told this person, I'll drive you back to the hotel because I have a car. And so just come out with us, come out to dinner, and I'll drive you back kind of thing. And so I had time, I think I was alone with them in my car, and I gave them a ride. I think we drove from the church to somewhere in Long Beach together in my car, and then I drove them to the hotel. I let them borrow a CD that I think they kept. I think it was my Symphony X CD, and I let them borrow it, but I think they kept it. And I kind of didn't mind because I was like, oh, hopefully they like it, because we kind of had music and art and, all our little techie hobbies in common. And I was just excited to meet someone who had similar hobbies. I like kind of techie, nerdy creatives, that's kind of my thing. It's hard for me if there's someone who's not at all either musical or artistic or, into kind of software and video games and books and things like art and stuff like that, cinema type stuff, different events and stuff. Like, I don't know, it's hard for me to kind of connect with people who aren't really into anything. But yeah, like, we had fun, but that friend was definitely kind of shaming about what they witnessed, about how me and that person were kind of like verbally saying something a little bit back and forth, but I don't remember what we said. But it was enough for her to kind of want to intervene, and then the person kind of left, and I was kind of like, dude, you're kind of blocking. Like, what's going on here? Like, I was not pleased with the way that friend had kind of inserted themselves, because I wasn't doing anything wrong. But they kind of, I did kind of feel bad about it. But yeah, that's an example of how strict that environment was. It's like you can't even be like a little playful over like a video game, or like just kind of like a little bit like, why don't you want to sit at our table kind of thing. Like, but I don't remember what I said at all, but I have no clue. But I said something. I think that's maybe what I said, was kind of like trying to beg them to sit at our table, but they didn't seem to want to hang out anymore. So, like, after my friend kind of made that comment, and I was just like, I think they felt kind of awkward about it, and then I felt kind of awkward about it. And I was like, when I look back at that, I'm like, dang, man, like, it's a little messed up. But, like, I mean, I was just having fun. It was just fun in the summer. Like, we were having fun together. I don't know why she had to like make a big deal out of it. Um, she wasn't like mean, but she was kind of shaming, I would say. Um, but that environment just isn't the type of environment to be authentic in. Like, if you can't even like have a crush on somebody and kind of slightly express it a little bit without somebody kind of like trying to like interfere or like make you stop, um, that's kind of awkward. Because I feel like in other environments that would be normal. Like the things that we were doing, like anything would be pretty normal. But yeah, we didn't really do a lot. Um, um, but yeah, it was fun. I had a good time. But yeah, when me and this friend were talking about, um, who I would be surprised about, it was like, well, anybody, because everyone, from the perspective I know them, everyone presents this persona of being like being a certain way, of being like just not very sexually expressive in any way, shape, or form, in either the way you dress or the way you talk or the way you interact with people. You can't really, people wouldn't be comfortable with you really telling like sexual jokes or even talking about like if you had a crush on someone or if you thought maybe some movie star was hot or something. Like those kind of conversations just weren't really super acceptable. And I feel like that's super strict because it's like, who doesn't usually say stuff like that? Whether what they're attracted to, who they're attracted to. We didn't really have like deep conversations about that as a group. And the fact that we're almost always hanging out in like a large group of people, it's like you were never really like one on one too much. And if you were, and people were kind of like, why are you guys always hanging out just one on one? Like that wasn't like an average thing to do. Even though people did it, like obviously you go to like dinner with certain people or whatever, but as far as like getting to know someone new and like asking them out on a date and trying to hang out and stuff, you didn't really do that much. Um, and it's just kind of interesting just looking back at that, but um, I'm just mentioning all of that because it's pretty relevant to the topic of you know what it looks like to be in an environment that's authentic or not. That was not a breeding ground for authenticity. It was more like people would hide what they felt they needed to hide. Um, so around, I mean, it's okay. I think it's okay to be like sometimes denying yourself or sometimes like disciplined with yourself and like maybe abstaining from certain things for certain periods of time. So say if you're like, oh, I'm not watching movies for the next 2 weeks, or I'm not listening to the radio, or I'm not watching the news, or I'm not going online after like 5 p.m. or whatever. Like it's okay to like, I wouldn't say that somebody has to be like extreme in like every aspect of their life, but it's like I think it's okay to like take a break from certain things. And so, like if people want to take a break from, you know, asking someone on a date you know, or meeting new people or anything like that, like I don't think there's anything like wrong with that. Um, I don't think there's anything wrong with people practicing celibacy and all that kind of stuff. But when you're in an environment where it's like they always expect all of that from you all the time, regardless, it's like you're always supposed to be like this, always and forever, you know? It's like, that's a little bit much in my opinion. But that's just kind of how the culture went, and you know, I definitely noticed, you know, when I was with other people, it did take a while to get comfortable outside of that religious crowd, you know, meeting new people. I did, you know, it was like a steep learning curve of how to be kind of more authentic with people. You know, I used to just like never share anything that was personal at all. Like people didn't really know anything about me. They didn't know if I was dating anyone or what was going on with me, or like they didn't know anything. They didn't know what I would do on the weekends. Like I would just talk about like hiking and like safe topics, and like they didn't even know if I had grown up in a religion or anything. Like I just kept everything kind of to myself, because I kind of learned that from that religious upbringing, that you kind of just keep things to yourself because you can't really fully be yourself. And I realized that is not a very fulfilling way to live. And so, you know, it does help to have relationships where you can be authentic about stuff. Alright, well, I'm back at Saturday morning, and I was like half falling asleep when I was recording last night, but yeah, I guess just to wrap up, because I don't want to make it way too long, but when it comes to, you know, authenticity in different relationships, you know, friendships, I think it's, you know, there has to be some kind of trust there. I mean, maybe for some people they don't need to trust people, and they're not very sensitive, or not very, yeah, they're not very sensitive or very easily hurt, and so they could just be around people who just say or do or act however, and it doesn't really faze them. I'm pretty sure that there are people like that exist, but I don't know a lot of people where that is kind of their main way of like interacting socially with others. Like I feel like most people want people to be nice and trustworthy, and it's just hard when people are coming maybe from different cultural angles, because and that's maybe something I want to talk about next, because different cultural angles can make it so that, you know, it's easy to get offended by something that maybe to me is not polite. I mean, not even to be like nitpicky about stuff, but it's like, you know, say for example, you know, there's something called like African time, or like, you know, different minority groups might have like, you know, when you say to meet somewhere at a certain time, they might not do it. I'll give an example. I was watching this video. There's this guy who's like an atheist that grew up religious, and he goes to different churches though, and kind of like reviews them, or like critiques them or audits them or something, about like different denominations of all kinds, cults and all kinds of stuff. And he went to this one Orthodox, I think it was a Coptic, I don't know, but it wasn't in English. He didn't speak the language, but he just went, and he said it was probably about 3 hours of standing. And he said he got there on time, or like maybe a few minutes early, and there were like 8 to 10 people. But I can't remember by the end if he said there were maybe like 100 or 150 or 200 people. I don't know. There were like a lot of people by the time the service was over, and people seemed to kind of start coming in like maybe an hour and a half into the service. But it had been going on, versus like, you know, typically if a church says it starts at a certain time, you're going to go at that time. but also it was like an Orthodox church. There was a lot of standing, there's a lot of stuff going on where maybe people know the order of the service and they want to come in at a certain time. And so, you know, that would be like a cultural thing. Whereas like if you knew that you didn't want to, if you knew that you wanted to get somewhere, or if you knew that you wanted to go to church or go to like an event or something, and it started at a certain time, you might think, okay, I'm gonna get here at this time. And then it's like there's almost nobody there for like over an hour, you know? There's just a few people, and then like the people who are, you know, the majority of the congregation wouldn't come in till like later. And there must be a reason why. Like I don't think it was like a super early like sunrise kind of service or something, but I think it was that they were coming in because there was maybe a part in the beginning that maybe they didn't want to do all that, or they wanted to skip it all, and people were more interested in whatever was happening at the time that they knew they were going to get there for that part. And it seems like, you know, I've gone to churches where, you know, they're kind of like, hey guys, let's get here on time, or like we're gonna try to start on time, or like churches where things started like 30 minutes late, like almost every week. And so there'd be like a start time, and then like, you know, the church wouldn't actually start. And so it's like, well, why am I gonna, like, there's a church I used to go to that was about a 25-minute drive away, and I knew they would always start about 30 minutes late, or 35 minutes late. And so I basically would leave the house at the time when the church was supposed to start, and I'd usually get there before it started, versus sitting there for like 30 minutes or something waiting. So, and some people can get frustrated about that, but that's just like a small example of just like events with start times, and like what time people show up, what time it says it's supposed to start, what time it actually starts, what time people actually get there, even if it already just starts without them. Kind of like, you know, and that can, you know, you don't really know if you're not part of the culture, you know, so it might be a little frustrating. I've seen it happen with weddings where the weddings start super late. I've seen it happen with kind of events where there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of people. But I think that, you know, it can be hard in relationships to kind of understand why people do what they do the way that they do it. Like a lot of times people don't explain, you know, and a lot of times they might not be like upset that you're late or something, or they might be. And to you, you might just be like, oh, well, when I say I'm going to be here at this time, it actually means I'm going to leave at this time, or like whatever. But it might be like a cultural thing. I'm not even talking about like people who aren't good with time management or whatever, but just like the understanding of like when something's going to start, when somebody's going to respond, you know, when you make plans together. If you say yes, does it mean yes? Do people hold you to it? Does, you know, do people expect you to show up when you say you're going to show up? You know, the other person's expectations, as well as kind of like how you yourself address something, like all those things can kind of contribute to like levels of trust and things, like in relationships, just like a level of trust that people have, or like breaking that trust. I'm not even talking about like cheating and lying and all that kind of cheating, lying, stealing, all those types of like things that are like clearly gonna, you know, damage the trust. But I, you know, I think people ultimately, you know, if they don't communicate about things, then, you know, that's where it's going to be hard to be authentic. You know, if people aren't communicating about kind of what they want or what they prefer or what works best for them, or how they can kind of like, have this like collaborative effort and like checking in with each other and stuff. Like if people don't do that and they just kind of plow through and do things their way and just expect everyone to like bend to their way or like be the way that they need for them to be, it's like that's not going to get very far, if especially if you're interacting with people that are kind of not super flexible or super passive and they're kind of like headstrong and like stubborn, and then you're kind of like clashing if one person doesn't really make that effort. But both people have to make the effort. One person can't just be communicating and the other person's just like shut down. Like that's not going to work either. But I think, I mean, it's not likely, and it's not maybe it's not fully to be expected that people are gonna completely understand everything, and communication is a big deal. And like even if you think about cultures with a lot of taboos, it's like what I've realized is with certain people it's hard to even talk about certain stuff because they're so uncomfortable talking about it, like that it's hard to kind of have a discussion, and I'm not talking like politics or like some topic where people are going to be arguing, but I'm just thinking about people who are raised in certain like cultures where like there's not a lot of open communication where people are talking about their emotions or like kind of, hey, let's talk about yesterday, like when that situation happened, and how you should, how, like, what are our opinions on that, and like let's discuss it, or like, sometimes it's just a little harder on people to understand, but yeah, I think it's definitely something to take note of. I wouldn't say that people can't be authentic with people they don't trust. I've noticed it happen. There's like a spectrum of things. Like if you know you're never gonna see somebody again, and that person's maybe like a good listener, or you're comfortable talking to them in the moment. This has happened to me a lot when I take an Uber, like say I'm coming back from Hollywood or something. The last time I was coming back from Hollywood, this happened to me. I was talking to the Uber driver. It's like a 45-minute drive or something late at night. And he's driving and he's talking, and, we start talking about like what you do for work, that kind of stuff. And it's like, I get into talking about social work and case management and all that kind of stuff. And he understands the field. And so, of course, he starts talking about like his problems with his elderly family, his elderly mother, that he's moved back to take care of her. He's working Uber. He's not really working, to try to, he's not doing the job he wanted to do, and ended up moving back to take care of his mom. And now he's there and not really wanting to live in that environment. And his money's not where he wants it to be. And he's kind of frustrated with things and just lonely and doesn't have a lot of friends and isn't really dating anybody. And like, he was just telling me all this stuff. And I'm just like, I mean, I was in a mood to talk to people though, but sometimes when that happens, when I'm like, I just wanted to chill, like I wasn't really trying to like listen to all this and like engage with all your life, stressors. I just wanted to like listen to music on a drive. But he was kind of like unloading, but I don't know if it was like, I didn't mind it. but he was doing a lot of sharing about things, and I don't know the guy. Maybe he's like that with every single person he drops off. Maybe he's like that with every single person he meets. Some people are. Some people just unload on every. Like, I think a lot of people who socialize often, you've probably come across people who just, you meet them and you kind of learn like every single detail about all the serious stuff in their life that's going on, and you barely know anything else about, like, hey, do you like ice cream? Like, do you go to movies? Like, what do you do for fun? Like, what kind of food do you eat? It's like, no, we're gonna talk about my trauma. Like when you first meet them, like it happens. But I think there is like a social etiquette to that too, where it's like it can be too much. Like too much too soon is kind of like not it's not really considered appropriate in our American culture, I would say. But more and more people are considering it more appropriate to like be open and sharing. Like once you've kind of like established some kind of like friendship or something, like I think you don't have to be like, oh yeah, today was happy and it was a good day. If it wasn't a good day, you know. But I've noticed that a lot when it's like strangers. A lot of times, people might find it easier to like open up about stuff because they're like, well, I'm probably never going to see this person again, so they'll maybe tell you a lot more things than they would just tell like their roommate or their parent or their friend. They would maybe just be open about stuff that's going on for them right now because they just need someone to talk to in the moment, and they want something that isn't really connected to their lives. And there is a purpose that's served in that. I'm not saying people shouldn't do it, but I have noticed it does happen in a lot of settings where people aren't really gonna see each other again, or know that they're not gonna make plans to see each other. Like if it's just an Uber, I'm not trying to like. There's one Uber I think that I got their contact info and stayed in touch with them. Otherwise, I don't think there have been other people where you know I was staying in touch and stuff. But there is something to authenticity. There's I think people don't feel like maybe fulfilled enough in their relationships if it's just always too much fluff. Like I do have certain friends, or yeah, certain friends that we don't really talk about anything deep. We just go and like we're in loud spaces all the time, and we kind of just go party and like don't really catch up and don't really have like a personal, like we catch up but not like a lot, and so I do have friends that are like that, where it's like there's maybe not a whole lot of depth to it, but like we get along, so we hang out, and that's fine. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I think when I grew up, in the environment I grew up, that's why I was mentioning all that church stuff. The environment that I grew up in, it wasn't really always safe to be very open with people. There was a lot of like hiding things. It's not that there was like lying, it was more like you're hiding things from people because you're like, oh, well, socially, in this culture, in this church culture, in this culture of this religion, socially, you kind of learn what's okay to talk about culturally and what's culturally not acceptable within that subgroup of a culture, and you kind of learn about it. And just being around it, like my family was involved with it, and And so, the way my family kind of communicates is very similar to kind of that churchy thing, that churchy environment. But I would probably say my siblings and I are kind of more, we're all millennials and we're all like kind of more like, I think millennials are probably a little more emotionally open and overall kind of maybe a little more open-minded to talk about different topics that people of previous generations are pretty close to. As a whole, you can always find people that are like pretty open to talk about stuff, but like just like the acceptance, like what millennials are kind of more like, I'm not really fazed by this. Like I have retired neighbors on both sides, right? Like if a trans couple moved in next door to us, if the elderly guy on one side was like, family's gonna sell the house, he's gonna go live, who knows where he's gonna live, he's gonna live somewhere else, and someone's gonna move in, and whoever moves in, like say they're, where was I going with this? I don't know where I was going with that. Sorry. I kind of lost my train of thought. Okay, so I remembered where I was going with that. So, say for example, if the old people next to me moved out, a trans couple moves in, I would just be like, okay. Like, of course, you're going to take note of your neighbors, like how they look, how they seem. There might be some interaction, there might not be. You might introduce yourself. They might introduce themselves. Maybe. I don't even know. Some people, never talk to their neighbors ever. They never move in and like say hi, or no one ever comes to greet them. And yeah, that's kind of all. But yeah, I just I don't think I'd really be fazed by it. Like the only thing I would probably think about is like if like any kind of neighbor, if they were throwing loud parties or being noisy or had like a dog that was just like obnoxious, I'd be like annoying, those people are annoying. But other than that, like I can't really see myself being like, oh, like these people are this religion, or these people are from this country, or these people are like, I don't think I have prejudices that run that deep that there's not a type of person that could like move in next to me and I'd be like upset by them being who they are. Like, I think it would be more like how they are. They could be either like I like them or they're annoying. But I don't think who they are would really be like, I mean, that those are maybe like the same thing, but like who they are just like on the surface of like their cultural background and stuff, where they're from, or sexual anything. Like, I think for me mostly like noise level and just like cleanliness level, and like if they had some, if they decided to store trash, right, beside the fence outside my window, I'd be kind of like, okay, what is wrong with these neighbors? Like any kind of neighbor that would do that, I'd be like, what is going on? If I can smell it, or if I can hear it, or if I have to see it, like if I noticed for some reason people were like pointing laser beams into my window at night or something. Like, like if it was like little children, I'd be like, whatever, because I sleep with the blinds kind of open a lot of times. And so, like, if somebody was just like randomly doing that, you know, I'd just be like, what are you doing? Like, that's weird. Um, but I can't really think of a type of person that would move in. But I'm just thinking, like, previous generations. Like, if I think about my parents, or some of my aunts and uncles, or some of the people that are like friends of the family that are like my parents' friends, they would probably be like, oh, these people like from this religion moved in, and like, or like this, group of, the Sikh family moved in, and they have like this extended family, or like this Hmong family moved in, and they've got all these people coming over all the time, or like, this like a certain type of family that like moves in, and they're like having, like even if it's not, I'm not saying like a loud gathering or something, but like, you notice when there's, people that are like, oh, like these people are all wearing turbans, or they're all wearing like headscarves, or they're all dressed in a certain type of garb, or, speaking a certain language, or they're a certain skin tone, or like whatever is going on. I don't think that would bother me as much. Like any of it would really bother me. It's just more so if there's anything that they're doing that's interfering with me, not just the way they look or where they're from, but like if there's something they're doing where it's like it's too loud, or it's, too early for that. Like if you're mowing your lawn at like 3 in the morning, it's like, bro, like don't do that, like what are you doing? Like, but yeah, I don't I don't think my generation, at least in major cities, I don't think we're too concerned. We're just kind of like whatever. Like people are different, and people are allowed to have their differences, and it's not usually an issue until it's an issue. Like that's, at least I don't know. There are prejudiced people, so that's not really that. I'm not. Maybe I'm overly generalizing, because I do think, actually, when I think of it, I do know a lot of prejudiced people of my own generation that, if a couple or a family or, roommates moved in next door and they were like a certain way that they weren't used to seeing, they probably would be a little suspicious or concerned or upset by it. I don't care though. I don't care. Like, I really don't care about much other than like smells, noise levels, cleanliness. If they're taking up all of our parking, or like, just like common courtesy. Like, don't park across my driveways. If I need to get out, I don't want to have to go to your house to knock on your door and wait for you to come out and move your car so I can move my car. It's like, that's not, like, you have your own house, park in front of your own driveway, like, park over there. But but I do think it kind of relates to, just meeting people and being around people who are kind of different. People who share their differences. But I don't know. It's a lot of food for thought. I know I talked a lot about like church environment stuff, but I can't really. It's hard for me to really talk about my background without talking about that, because that's pretty much a huge part of my cultural background. Like, I can't discount it and be like, let's just not talk about that. It's like it shaped a lot of, how I think. I'm not saying I like super believe in like all the stuff I learned in the religion and stuff, but I'm just saying, I did definitely take some values from it, but then there's some things that I was like, okay, it definitely wasn't of value to me to be around people that weren't really promoting authenticity. Like, the religion didn't really promote or encourage people to be authentic. they encourage people to kind of stick with the traditions, and then even trying to talk about the experience of like, okay, is it difficult to stick with these traditions? There was some like judgment around that. Like you still couldn't really be like open about like, I don't want to do this, or this is a struggle, or I'm not even doing it. You know, like you just act like you're doing it and just don't talk about it and don't get caught doing stuff that you're not expected to be doing. That's kind of what I learned. I was like, well, you just act like you do it. You know, when I go out with my friends, you know, maybe I'm not gonna order pepperoni pizza, even if I might order it on my own. I might not order it on my own, but you know, if I'm around vegans, I'll order like meatloaf or whatever. I'll order meat. Like I don't really care. Like I'll eat meat around vegans. It doesn't really bother me. People know how I eat. They know what I eat. So, you know, I don't think they're going to be offended by what I eat, or they're just not going to go out to eat if they want to eat some certain kind of food. And I'll go to vegan places and eat vegan food. I don't really care. But, you know, I'm not going to like change how I eat, you know. But I do actually. I have changed how I eat when I'm around certain people. Because I'm like, I don't want them to like judge me for it. Like there's certain people where like I wouldn't get a drink if we're at a bar. I wouldn't get a drink, you know, if we're having like maybe like a dinner or lunch at like a bar and grill and I'm with certain friends. I probably wouldn't order a drink. With other friends I might order a drink. But with certain friends I just wouldn't order a drink because I'd be like, I know this person doesn't drink and not something they do, and like I'm not gonna sit here and drink by myself, so I'm probably just not gonna order a drink. And we don't go out drinking and stuff, like, so it's just like when we're eating, we go out to eat, so we're not really going out to drink, you know. So certain stuff like that, I would say that's one way of kind of like how I would kind of maybe make a different choice around certain religious people that I do still socialize with. Or there's just certain topics I just wouldn't bring up. Even if it's something I might want to talk about, I wouldn't talk about it with them. I wouldn't. I wouldn't feel comfortable. But I feel like if I would have stayed in only those kind of relationships, like I didn't find it really all that fulfilling, because it was like there wasn't a lot of space to really like explore different topics or like talk about ideas. It was very limiting. Of like, to me, it was too limiting. I'm like, I don't like to limit that much of how I think or what I'm thinking about. I don't want to limit it that much to thinking about anything. So I don't know, but yeah, those were kind of some things that I think, like when I do consider kind of like what authenticity looks like, you know, it doesn't mean people have to be like all up in each other's business about every detail of their life and history. Like people don't have to know everything. Like people can have secrets, and people don't have to share the same information with everybody. Like there might be certain friends that it's like, okay, this is what I talk about with them, but I don't talk about it with these other people. You know, it's okay to do that, I think. You know, everything doesn't have to be like equally like open conversation with everybody. I don't think that's realistic because not everybody wants to have those open conversations, you know? So, but if you're someone who does want that and you're trying to be with someone who doesn't want that, that could probably be an issue. But I've got some music I need to be working on, so I'm gonna log off of here. I'll eventually upload this. I don't know when, because I am not doing good at uploading. These extra steps with Spotify for podcasters, it's exhausting to me. This platform has become an exhaustion for me to kind of record on. I don't like sitting in front of my laptop recording. I don't like this. To be honest, I don't like this at all. I liked recording on my phone and like being out and about and like down the street and stuff, sitting outside in the shade. I don't like this. I don't like recording on my laptop. I don't like sitting in my room recording on my laptop. I guess I could technically take my laptop down the street, but the battery doesn't last as long anymore, so I might just need to exchange the battery. I don't know, man. I used to keep it plugged in all the time. It used to have maybe like a 4-hour battery life, and now the battery life's maybe like an hour or so. But also I wasn't doing much on it before, and now I do more. Like I'll record or like be watching something and, you know, maybe it's kind of more taxing on the hardware than it was before. I don't know. This computer is pretty old when I think about it. I just like that it's small, it's sleek, it's simple. I can use it for all of my basic needs, but I do need something better. Artistic wise, I need something better, but I haven't been so engaged with things where it's like limiting me. Like musically, it's not limiting me. I think the sound card is limiting me musically, but I don't know. I think I figured that part out. I was having like a latency issue. I think I figured it out. I'm gonna test it out on my keyboard in a little bit and see if the thing that I thought was going wrong, that if I've been able to troubleshoot what that was. Because it would be like if I press a key on the keyboard, like on my piano, it wouldn't exactly come over to my, you know, at the same time. It wasn't like, you know, it was like there was some delayed, you know, I pressed the key and then like, you know, a second later the note plays through my computer. So it's like, I'm like, that, you can't really write songs like that. Like, like that's not gonna work. I mean, you can technically write like maybe one track and not monitor while you're like, you can't listen to it. Like, I don't know. I think if I could hear the keyboard I was playing and I could hear it in real time through the keyboard, it wouldn't matter how the track records necessarily on the computer. But then if I tried to like listen to that and record a second track over it, like monitoring, I don't think I could I don't think I could do that. So jeez. Oh my goodness. I need to get my jaw checked. I don't know if I have TMJ or something. I think this is like the 3rd week now, maybe the 4th week. I've lost track of time. I think about the 3rd week that my jaw kind of just hurts. It kind of cracks. It's slightly feeling better, little by little, but it's not fully feeling better because I do have to eat 3 times a day, and I'm just not chewing on my right side anymore. Yeah, my jaw kind of cracks a little. I don't know what's wrong. Something's wrong. I know something's wrong. I just can't tell what it is. But alright. I'm stalling. Let me listen. Let me work on this music. But that's gonna be all for now. Thanks for listening.